The great chamber of the conclave of spheres was a void given form, a sphere of polished obsidian so vast that the star map projected in its center seemed a captured galaxy, breathing with the slow, deliberate light of a billion suns. Around this stellar heart, platforms of liquid crystal drifted in silent, ordained patterns, each bearing the delegation of a member species, their forms illuminated by the soft glow of their life-support fields. A tension, cold and sharp as fractured spacetime, permeated the void. It was a silence that spoke of fleets mustering at the edge of perception, of economies bracing for the shock of war, and of the gnawing, unifying fear that had brought them all to this precipice. At the center of this fear was an enigma, a single, impossibly defiant point of light on the grand map, nestled deep within the contested territory of the Cathar Ascendancy. High Lord Vorlag of the Cathar, his carapaced form a monument of jagged obsidian and simmering biotic energy, stood rigid upon his delegation's dais. His mandibles twitched, a subtle gesture of profound agitation that sent ripples of unease through the lesser species in his orbit. His voice, when it came, was the grating sound of continents grinding together, a low-frequency broadcast that resonated in the very bones of those with skeletal structures and in the psychic core of those without. For the last cycle we have debated, we have deliberated, we have allowed the Lumina to weave their philosophies of patience and the Signian technocrats to drown us in probabilities that lead nowhere. And all the while it sits there, an insult cast in metal and silence. He gestured with a clawed hand toward the solitary speck of light representing the human vessel. One ship, not a fleet, not a diplomatic envoy preceded by protocols and declarations. One ship that has halted the righteous expansion of the Cathar Ascendancy by its mere presence. It is an act of such profound arrogance it borders on madness. From a platform bathed in a soft, ethereal luminescence, the form of Speaker Xylos of the Lumina shimmered. Their bodies were constructs of coherent light and intricate energy patterns, their thoughts rippling through the chamber not as sound but as concepts, translated by the conclave's neural interface into comprehensible language. Arrogance presumes a belief in superiority, High Lord. Madness presumes a disconnect from reality. What if this act is neither? What if it is a question? The thought was calm, flowing like cool water over the fire of Vorlag's pronouncement. We have studied the fragments of data recovered from their initial chaotic expansion. We know the humans are a young species, barely a whisper in the galactic timeline. They emerged from their cradle world with a ferocity that alarmed us all, then fell silent for a period that, to them, must have been an age of reflection. Now they return, not with an armada, but with this statement. We must ask ourselves what an intelligence would intend by placing a single, undefended piece on the board against a king. Archivist Pell of the Signian technocracy adjusted the optical sensors on its multi-jointed stalk, its metallic form whirring with quiet servomotors. Its platform was a web of data streams, flowing in cascading waterfalls of pure information. The logic is absent, Pell stated, its synthesized voice a monotone of pure analysis, devoid of emotion yet heavy with the frustration of an unsolved equation. All predictive models collapse. A show of force requires force. A diplomatic overture requires communication. A declaration of war requires an army. The object designated solitude by the humans themselves does none of this. It has not answered our hails. It has not powered its weapon systems. Its energy signature is a flat line of perfect containment, a state of technological grace our most advanced reactors cannot achieve. It simply exists, in our path. Its position is strategically perfect to halt our supply lines, yet it makes no move to do so. It is a paradox, a weapon that does not threaten, a shield that does not defend. It is an impossibility, and it is breaking our models of sentient behavior. Vorlag let out a low growl of contempt. Your models are built on the predictable cowardice of lesser species, Archivist. You assume logic where there is only a failure of nerve. They sent one ship because they have no more to send. Their brief flicker of expansion is over. This is a bluff, a final, pathetic gesture of a species that has exhausted its resources. They believe we will be paralyzed by our own philosophies, that we will debate ourselves into inaction while they, what? Hope we simply forget they are there? The Cathar do not forget. We do not yield. This insult will be answered. My fleets surround it. A sea of Cathar might, an armada that has shattered moons and boiled away oceans. Against it, a single mote of dust. A mote of dust that has captured the attention of the entire galaxy, Xylos countered, its light form pulsing gently. High Lord, your fleets have been in position for a full rotation. They have not fired. Your own commanders, bred for glorious battle, hesitate. They feel it too. The wrongness of it, you speak of bluff, but a bluff is meant to be called. Why have you not called it? Because deep in your warrior's heart, you fear the answer to the question it poses. You fear that this is not a failure of their logic, but a failure of our understanding. The chamber fell silent again, the weight of Xylos's words settling over the delegations. The Lumina were ancient, having witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Their counsel was rarely ignored, for they remembered the ashes of empires that had mistaken wisdom for weakness. Vorlag's biotic field flared, a visible aura of violet energy crackling around his form. He was a being of action, of conquest and dominion. This enforced stillness, this philosophical quagmire, was a greater torment to him than any physical wound. He looked at the star map, at the single point of light that held his ascendancy in check. It was so small, so utterly insignificant against the backdrop of his power. Yet it felt like a star, a superdense singularity of purpose whose gravity was bending the path of galactic history around it. He hated it. He hated it for its silence, for its simplicity, and most of all, for the cold seed of doubt it had planted in the bedrock of his certainty. The human ship, the Solitude, floated in the silent dark. It was a spearhead of polished, obsidian-like material, so black it seemed to drink the light of the distant stars. It had no visible viewports, no external sensor arrays, no protruding weapon emplacements. Its surface was a seamless, unbroken whole, a piece of geometry so pure it felt less manufactured and more coalesced. Around it, arrayed in a sphere of overwhelming force, was the Cathar fleet. The ships were brutalist monstrosities of jagged armor plating and exposed weapon systems, their hulls glowing with the malevolent red of their weapon conduits and the angry blue of their engine plumes. They were a physical manifestation of Cathar philosophy, might made manifest, aggression given form. They blotted out the starfield, a forest of metallic thorns aimed at a single, smooth stone. On the bridge of the Cathar flagship, the Will of Cathros, Vorlag's second-in-command, Sublord Kale, watched the viewscreen. The human ship hung there, serene and motionless. His sensory crest tingled with a constant, low-level anxiety. His crew, warriors all, were unnaturally quiet. The thrum of the ship's war drive felt muted, the air thick with unspoken apprehension. For a cycle, they had waited for the order to fire for the glorious release of their righteous power. But the order had not come. The High Lord was mired in politics, and they were left to stare into the abyss of this human riddle. Status, Kale grated, his voice tight. No change, Sublord, the Sensor Priest reported, its multiple eyes blinking in sequence. The human vessel maintains absolute energy neutrality, no emissions, no communications, no fluctuations in its mass effect field. It is placid. Placid, the word was an obscenity. A thing should not be placid in the face of annihilation. It should scream or beg or fight. It should do something. This placidity felt like a judgment. It was the calm of a predator so certain of its superiority that it did not even deign to acknowledge the lesser creature's threat. But that was impossible. The Cathar were the apex. Their fleets were the final argument of the galaxy. Kale's mandibles clenched. He felt a surge of pure, unadulterated rage, a desire to simply give the order himself and watch that perfect, silent hull shatter into a billion pieces. He wanted to see it burn. He wanted to prove that it was just metal and systems, that it could die like anything else. But the High Lord's command was absolute. Wait. And so they waited, a fleet of caged beasts staring at the man who held the key, wondering if he was a fool or a ghost. Back in the conclave, the debate had reached its inevitable, fractious conclusion. The technocrats had abstained, citing insufficient data to recommend any course of action. The smaller, more cautious species had sided with the Lumina, advocating for continued observation. But the sheer weight and influence of the Cathar and their vassal states had tipped the balance. Vorlag had his mandate. He stood tall, his form radiating a triumphant, dangerous energy. The time for talk is over, he boomed, his voice a declaration of destiny. The conclave has affirmed the sovereignty of the Cathar ascendancy. We will issue one final ultimatum to the vessel Solitude. It will vacate our space immediately or it will be annihilated. There will be no further negotiation, no more riddles, only obedience or oblivion. Xylos's light form seemed to dim slightly, a sigh made of photons. So be it, High Lord, but remember this moment. The question you refuse to ask will still demand an answer, and the universe has a way of ensuring that answers are heard, whether we wish to listen or not. The ultimatum was sent, a tightly focused beam of communication encoded in every known galactic standard, from simple radio waves to quantum-entangled psionic pulses. It was a message of pure, unambiguous intent, a demand and a threat. It sliced through the void, crossed the distance to the silent human ship, and was absorbed without a reply. For a long, agonizing moment, the conclave held its collective breath. The Cathar fleet waited, weapons capacitors humming at peak charge. The galaxy watched. Then something changed. A single soft point of white light bloomed on the obsidian hull of the Solitude. It wasn't a weapon port opening. It was not the flare of an engine. It was just light. And from that light a voice emerged. It was broadcast on a universal frequency, clear and calm, without the slightest hint of inflection or emotion. But it was not a machine. It was organic, female, and it spoke a flawless, unaccented form of the Conclave's high diplomatic tongue. "This is Captain Eva Restover of the United Human Worlds vessel Solitude." The voice was a stark contrast to the grating authority of the Cathar or the ethereal resonance of the Lumina. It was simple, direct, and utterly devoid of fear. "We acknowledge your ultimatum. We understand your position. We must respectfully decline your request to withdraw." The audacity of the statement was a physical blow. In the conclave chamber, gasps and murmurs rippled through the delegations. On the bridge of the Will of Cathros, Sublord Kale felt a tremor of disbelief. He had expected threats or pleas or static. Not this polite refusal. It was like a child calmly telling a star it would not be burned. High Lord Vorlag's rage finally broke its leash. His broadcast to his fleet was a roar of pure fury, a command that needed no translation. "Fire! Erase them from existence!" But before his command could be fully executed, before the Sublord could even give the order, the human captain spoke again, her voice cutting through the rising tide of aggression with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. "A word of counsel, High Lord Vorlag," the voice said, still unnervingly calm. "We did not come here to fight you. We did not come here to threaten you. We came here to understand you. This vessel is not a warship. To fire upon it with lethal intent would be unwise, not for us, for you." This was it, the threat behind the silence, the teeth behind the placid smile. Vorlag felt a surge of vindication. So the true nature of the human is revealed, a threat veiled in false peace. You think your single ship holds some secret weapon that can defy an armada, some doomsday device? We are Cathar, we were born in fire, we do not fear oblivion. "There is no weapon, High Lord," Captain Restova replied, and for the first time a subtle shift could be detected in her tone. It was not fear nor anger, it was something that felt ancient and weary, a profound and sorrowful gravity. "There is only a choice, your choice. We will not fire upon you. We will not raise a shield against you in the conventional sense. This ship's hull is a perceptual filter, a causality matrix. It does not block energy, it receives it. It translates it. If you fire upon this vessel with the intent to destroy us, that intent, that complete causal chain of aggression, will be returned to you. Not as energy, not as matter, but as experience. You will be made to understand the consequences of your actions in the most fundamental way imaginable. You will feel what you seek to destroy." A wave of confusion washed over the conclave and the Cathar fleet. A perceptual filter? A causality matrix? The words were meaningless, technobabble designed to confuse and delay. Archivist Pell's systems raced, searching for any theoretical framework that could support such a claim. It found none. It was a bluff. A clever, philosophical bluff, but a bluff nonetheless. Vorlag laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You offer us riddles and poetry as your defense, you will be returned experience? Your species is more pathetic than I imagined. Sublord Kale, fire a warning shot, a single plasma lance. Let us see how their experience fares against the heart of a sun." On the Will of Cathros, Kale hesitated for a half-second. The human's words, as nonsensical as they were, had a chilling resonance. But an order was an order. "Target the vessel's bow," he commanded. "Single lance, fire." A beam of incandescent energy, a torrent of magnetically contained plasma hotter than any star, erupted from the flagship. It crossed the distance in an instant, a brilliant spear of pure destruction aimed at the heart of the human enigma. The delegations of the conclave watched on their displays, transfixed. This was the moment the riddle would be solved, the moment the bluff would be called. The plasma lance struck the Solitude, and nothing happened. There was no explosion, no flare of a shield, no shower of molten armor. The beam of coherent energy simply vanished. It touched the black hull and was gone as if it had been poured into a bottomless well. The obsidian surface of the human ship did not even glow with residual heat. It remained cold, dark, and utterly unchanged. A collective shock, a wave of pure, unadulterated disbelief rolled through the conclave. On the Cathar bridge, the sensor priest shrieked, its optical sensors flaring with overload. "Impossible! The energy is gone. It was not deflected. It was not absorbed and stored, it ceased to exist in our dimension. All sensor readings are flat. It is a null event. Archivist Pell's platform began to flicker erratically as its core processors struggled to reconcile the data with the known laws of physics. Causality violation, it whispered, its synthesized voice filled with a digital horror. The effect did not produce an equal and opposite reaction. The energy, it was unmade. Before anyone could process the implications of this, the human captain's voice returned. It was unchanged, still maddeningly calm. That was your warning. There will not be another. We are not your enemy. The choice to make us one is yours and yours alone. We urge you to choose wisely. High Lord Vorlag stared at his display, his mind a maelstrom of fury, humiliation, and a terrifying, burgeoning fear. They had struck a god with their best weapon, and the god had not even noticed. His authority, his entire worldview, was built on the simple principle that sufficient force could solve any problem. That principle had just been shattered. His armada, the pride of the Cathar, was a collection of useless toys. The insult was absolute. His honor, the honor of his people, demanded a response. Fear and pride were a potent, toxic brew. All ships, he roared, his voice cracking with monumental rage. Fire at will, overwhelm it, saturate the coordinates. I do not care what magic they possess. Nothing can withstand the full might of the ascendancy. Break them. This time there was no hesitation. The latent aggression of the Cathar warriors, coiled tight for so long, was unleashed. A storm of unimaginable energy converged on the single point in space where the solitude waited. Lances of pure plasma, torpedoes that warped spacetime on impact, kinetic slugs accelerated to near light speed, beams of coherent radiation that could strip a planet of its atmosphere in minutes. It was not a battle, it was an execution. A star was being born in the void, a man-made nova of pure destructive will, and at its heart was the lone human ship. And then it began. It did not start on the human ship. It started on the bridge of the will of Cathros inside the mind of High Lord Vorlag. As he watched the storm of energy his fleet had unleashed, a wave of something utterly alien washed over him. It was not pain. It was information. A torrent of sensory data, of emotion, of memory, so dense and so powerful that his formidable Cathar consciousness buckled under the strain. He was standing on a world of breathtaking blue and white under a yellow sun. He felt a strange, soft wind on exposed, sensitive skin he did not possess. He felt an emotion he could not name, a complex blend of awe and a deep, aching love for the beauty of the world around him. Then the image shifted. He was in a dark cave, huddled with others of his kind, their soft bodies trembling as monstrous predators prowled outside. He felt their terror, their desperation, their fierce, primal will to survive, to protect the small, vulnerable young ones in their midst. The torrent became a flood. He experienced 1,000 lifetimes in a single second. He was a scientist deciphering the language of the universe in the heart of a star. He was a poet weeping at the beauty of a sunset. He was a soldier dying in mud and blood, his last thoughts not of glory, but of a lover's face he would never see again. He felt the collective agony of a species that had warred with itself for millennia, the sheer, boundless horror of the atrocities they had committed against their own kind. He felt the guilt, the shame, the weight of a history soaked in blood. But then he felt the other side. He felt the boundless compassion that drove them to heal the sick, to care for the weak. He felt the insatiable curiosity that pushed them to look up at the stars and ask, why? He experienced the creation of art, of music that could break a heart made of stone, of stories that could build empires in the mind. He felt the quiet, unyielding love of a parent for a child, a force more powerful than any plasma lance. He felt the sorrow of loss, the joy of discovery, the quiet dignity of a life lived with purpose. He was experiencing humanity, all of it, the terror and the beauty, the hatred and the love, the despair and the hope. It was a symphony of contradictions, a species of killer poets, of philosopher brutes, of gods trapped in cages of fragile flesh. His mind, built for the simple, brutal calculus of war and dominance, was breaking. This was the experience the human captain had spoken of. It was not an attack. It was a truth so vast and overwhelming that it was a weapon in itself. The Cathar defined themselves by strength. But here was a strength they could not comprehend. The strength to endure self-inflicted wounds that would have driven any other species to extinction, and to emerge not just surviving, but striving, still reaching for the stars, still hoping to be better. The psychic feedback coursed through the Cathar command network. Sublord Kale fell to his knees, his mind reeling with the images of a human child taking its first steps. The censor priest wailed as it experienced the profound loneliness of an astronomer staring into the void, feeling both infinitesimally small and infinitely connected. Across the entire fleet, Cathar warriors, beings bred for nothing but combat, were incapacitated, not by force but by a sudden, violent infusion of empathy. They were feeling the soul of the species they were trying to annihilate, and it was devastating them. High Lord Vorlag collapsed onto the command dais, his great, armored body trembling. The psychic torrent receded, leaving him shattered, hollowed out, and irrevocably changed. He looked at the view screen. The storm of weapons fire had ceased as his warriors' minds were overwhelmed. In the center of the silent fleet, the Solitude floated unharmed, its single white light glowing with a soft, patient luminescence. It had not fought back. It had not needed to. It had simply shown them. It had held up a mirror, and the reflection had broken them. "Cease fire," he whispered, the words barely audible. Then, louder with the last of his strength, he broadcast to his entire, traumatized fleet. "Cease fire! Stand down! All ships, stand down!" Silence reigned in the conclave chamber. The delegations had watched the Cathar fleet unleash its apocalyptic firepower. They had seen the beams and torpedoes converge, and then they had seen the fleet simply stop. The energy readings from the Cathar ships went haywire, not with battle damage, but with massive, systemic neurological feedback events. The Cathar had, in essence, attacked themselves. Speaker Xylos's light form pulsed with a bright, intense glow. "It is as I feared," its thoughts echoed through the stunned silence. "This is not a weapon of destruction. It is a weapon of revelation. The humans do not conquer their enemies. They force their enemies to conquer themselves, to conquer their own aggression, their own fear. They have weaponized understanding." Archivist Pell's servomotors whirred loudly, a sound of distress. "The data is incomprehensible. They have found a way to transmit raw qualia, subjective conscious experience, as a directed defensive response. They have bypassed energy and matter and attacked the core of sentience itself. This changes every equation. War, as we understand it, is obsolete against such a capability." A new communication signal opened. It was from the human ship. It was Captain Rostova's voice, as calm and steady as ever, but now it held the weight of a teacher addressing a class of stunned and humbled students. "We are still here," she said. "We are not your enemy. We did not seek this confrontation. But we could not allow your expansion to continue unchecked. Not because we covet your territory, but because your philosophy is a dead end. It is a path that has been walked by countless species before you, and it always ends in ashes. We have seen the ruins. We have read the final, despairing messages of long-dead civilizations that consumed themselves in their pursuit of power. The galaxy is full of ghosts, High Lord Vorlag. We refuse to become one of them, and we will not stand by and watch another species with great potential walk into the same abyss." High Lord Vorlag, still on the floor of his bridge, listened. The words did not sting with insult. They resonated with the terrible, profound truth he had just been forced to experience. He had seen humanity's abyss. He had felt them claw their way out of it, scarred and broken, but still climbing. The Cathar had never faced such a test. Theirs had been a history of unbroken conquest. They had never been forced to confront the monster within, until now. Slowly, painfully, he rose to his feet. He looked at the human ship, no longer with hatred, but with a terrifying, world-altering sense of awe. This was true power, not the power to destroy, but the power to create. The power to change the very nature of a foe. What do you want from us?" Vorlag asked, his voice a hoarse whisper, broadcast for all the conclave to hear. "We want nothing from you," Captain Rostova replied. "We offer something to you, a new equation, a different path. We are not here to rule. We are here to talk, to learn, to build. The galaxy is vast and full of wonders, but it is also full of dangers far greater than the ambitions of any single species. We believe that the only way to face those dangers is together, united, not by force, but by a shared understanding of what it means to be sentient, to be fragile, and to be alive." The conclave of spheres was convened again, but the atmosphere was profoundly different. The tension was gone, replaced by a deep, resonant sense of humility and wonder. High Lord Vorlag stood on his dais, not as a proud conqueror, but as a humbled survivor of a war he hadn't known he was fighting. His biotic field was calm, his posture no longer aggressive. He was listening. Captain Eva Rostova's image was projected in the center of the chamber, life-sized and clear. Her face was serene, her eyes holding a depth that seemed to encompass the entirety of the experience Vorlag had endured. She wore a simple, dark uniform, unadorned with medals or rank insignia. Her authority needed no such validation. "For millennia," she began, her voice filling the vast chamber, "our species was alone. We looked at the stars and we saw only silence. We believed we were a cosmic accident, a fleeting spark of consciousness in an uncaring universe. That loneliness forged us. It forced us to rely on each other to overcome our own violent nature because we had no one else. When we finally reached the stars, we expected to find a vibrant galaxy, teeming with life and conversation. Instead, we found whispers. Echoes, the ruins of great civilizations, and a profound, unsettling quiet. She gestured and the star map shifted. Points of light appeared, marking the locations of dead worlds, of shattered megastructures, of planets whose surfaces were fused to glass. We called it the Great Filter, a hypothetical barrier that prevented life from achieving a stable interstellar presence. We found evidence of it everywhere. Civilizations that had exhausted their resources. Civilizations that had succumbed to self-replicating technological plagues. But most often, civilizations that had destroyed each other in conflicts, much like the one we just averted. Her gaze seemed to fall on Vorlag, not with accusation, but with sympathy. We realized that the Great Filter was not one barrier, but many, and the final, highest barrier was philosophical. It was the inability of a species to transcend its own primal instincts for dominance and fear. Any species capable of interstellar travel is, by definition, capable of self-annihilation. The power to build is inseparable from the power to destroy. The only thing that can moderate that power is wisdom. Empathy, the understanding that the other is, in a fundamental way, a reflection of the self. Without that understanding, the galaxy becomes a zero-sum game, a race to consume before being consumed, a race that no one ever truly wins. Xylos's light form pulsed in agreement. You speak a truth we have long contemplated, human. You have not merely theorized it. You have engineered it. You have made empathy a physical law of engagement. We had to, Rostova said simply. We saw the path we were on. We saw our own potential for cosmic tyranny, so we made a choice. We would not expand, we would connect. The Solitude and its sister ships are not scouts for an invasion. They are antibodies, sent into the galaxy to find other forms of life and offer them an inoculation against self-destruction. The technology of the perceptual hull is our promise to ourselves and to you. A promise that we will never use our power to dominate another sentient being. We will only ever use it to defend the principle of mutual understanding. A long silence followed. The implications of her words settled upon the ancient races of the Conclave. The humans were not a young, arrogant species. They were an old soul, a species that had stared into the abyss of its own nature and had chosen to build a ladder out of it rather than pulling the rest of the galaxy in with them. They were not conquerors. They were guardians. They were saviors. It was Vorlag who broke the silence. His voice was rough, but it had lost its grating edge. It was the voice of a being truly seeing the universe for the first time. You have shown us our reflection. It is not a thing of honor. We accept your counsel. The Cathar ascendancy will stand down its expansion. We will listen. This single concession sent a shockwave through the conclave more powerful than any weapon. The Cathar, the most implacably aggressive power in the known galaxy, were yielding, not to a threat of force, but to an idea. An alliance began to form, not of military necessity, but of philosophical purpose. The humans, with their profound technology of the soul, the Lumina, with their ancient wisdom, the technocrats, with their boundless analytical power, and even the Cathar, with their unmatched strength now tempered by a humbling new perspective. It was the dawn of a new era, the beginning of a true galactic community. As the final protocols of this new, unprecedented alliance were being discussed, a soft chime sounded on the bridge of the Solitude. It was an alert from the ship's deep-range sensor arrays, instruments of a sensitivity that made the conclave's best look like primitive telescopes. Captain Rostova's expression, for the first time, shifted from calm authority to one of intense, focused concern. "Excuse me, members of the conclave," she said, her voice cutting through the diplomatic chatter. "I am receiving a priority sensor reading." "Is it a threat?" Archivist Pell asked, its data streams already preparing for a new analysis. "No," Rostova said slowly, her eyes fixed on a point beyond the holographic display in front of her. "It is not a threat, it is an echo." She manipulated her controls, and the main star map in the conclave chamber changed. It zoomed out, pulling back from their spiral galaxy until it was a glittering pinwheel in a sea of black. And far beyond the edge of the galaxy, in the absolute, crushing emptiness of the intergalactic void, a single point of data was highlighted. "My ship was not only designed as a diplomatic instrument," Rostova explained, her voice now grim, heavy with a burden she had carried in secret until this very moment. It is also the most sensitive listening post ever created. We built it to listen for the whispers we found on the worlds of the dead. We wanted to know what silenced them. The data point was analyzed by the conclave systems. It was not a communication signal. It was not an energy source. Archivist Pell's synthesized voice was tight with confusion. These are decay signatures, tachyonic resonance patterns. They are impossibly ancient, predating the formation of this galaxy. The patterns, they are not random. They suggest a structured object, a creation of intelligence on a scale that is physically nonsensical. A megastructure so large it would induce gravitational lensing, yet it is not there. We are detecting the memory of its shadow. It was Speaker Xylos who understood first. Its light form flickered violently, a rare display of shock. It is not a structure, its thought rippled through the chamber, laced with a dawning, cosmic horror. It is a wound, a scar in the fabric of spacetime itself. We are not seeing the echo of something that was built. We are seeing the echo of something that was erased. Captain Rostova nodded, her face etched with a profound solemnity. For 50 years, we have been tracking these echoes. They are appearing all over the void like faint ripples on a pond. Something is moving out there in the great dark between galaxies. It is ancient, and it is vast, and it is hungry. It doesn't communicate. It doesn't conquer. It silences. It removes civilizations from existence so completely that it leaves behind nothing but these faint scars on reality. A new, deeper cold settled over the conclave. Their own petty squabbles, their ambitions, their fears of each other, all seemed like the games of children in the shadow of this new, terrible revelation. The great filter wasn't a series of gates a civilization had to pass. It was a predator. "This is the real reason we came," Rostova said, her voice now a clarion call, the true purpose of her mission finally laid bare. "This is the answer to your question. Why did humanity send a single ship? Because we weren't looking for a fight. We were looking for allies. We knew we could not face this alone. The silence in the galaxy is not an absence of life. It is a presence, an active, malevolent silence that is spreading. We came to ask for your help. We came to see if you were worthy of helping. We had to know if you could overcome your own darkness before we could ask you to stand with us against a greater one." The single human ship, the Solitude, no longer looked like an instrument of peace. It now looked like a watchtower on the shore of an infinite dark ocean. It had stood against the Cathar Armada not as a test of its own strength, but as a test of the galaxy's soul. And now the test was over. The real war was about to begin. The lone ship was no longer alone. It was the flagship of a new hope, a tiny flicker of defiance against the coming silent night.